Good afternoon, everyone. Sandra Madafferi here, and I hope everyone's having a great Friday. I've been a little bit absent this week. I've been extremely busy, but luckily I've been able to jump on again today and do a bit of a live. I've just wanted to jump on and talk about a few things that have been coming up for people over this last week. I tend to always see, I guess, things going in patterns with people, and people calling me and wanting to discuss the same thing over and over again. And this week I've been hearing from a lot of people about things that they should have, could have, or would have wanted to do during this lockdown, and a lot of people feeling slightly guilty that other people are doing cooking and other people are doing studying and stuff like that. And I actually had someone on our coffee catch up the other morning that said that she was feeling quite guilty because she isn't quite doing what everyone else is doing. So I just wanted to jump on and talk a little bit about expectations and expecting ourselves, because to me the biggest thing that should be happening or coming out of this lockdown is an ability to get to know who you are on your terms, rather than getting to know yourself or doing all the things that people are saying you should be doing or you could be doing, and going through a state of feeling guilty because other people are putting their expectations out there, and you're taking them on as something that you should be expecting for yourself. So I can see quite a few people on here. I can't see everyone's names. I am on two computers as I usually am. So I'm going to read from my notes. So first I want to talk about what is an expectation. So an expectation is a prediction of how we believe things should turn out. So an expectation is something that we think the way something should turn out, or something we should do, or an outcome. And it's a thought process that we have of what we believe to be the truth, or the way things should be. So first of all, the very first thing I'm going to say is the first expectation you should have is not to expect that you shouldn't have expectations. And I know that sounds like a bit of a conundrum, but what I mean by that, it's human. It's actually human to have expectations, and it's important for you to recognize this, that you will at times in your life will have expectations, and it's okay to have them. It's just that if they begin to create stress or guilt or anything like that, that's when you need to probably visit them and have a look at them and say, okay, so what's going on for me? Okay, so remember that this is a human, quite a common human thing to have expectations. It's the way we are, so it's okay. And you don't I'm not doing this to for anyone to think, oh, I shouldn't have expectations, they're normal. So it's just how you deal with them, and everything that you do, whether it's an emotion, it's all normal. It's whether you react or respond that's the important thing. So expectations, although yes, they are normal, they are part of everyday human life, it's important to understand that they can be unhealthy. And a couple of the reasons why they can be unhealthy is because they can set you up for failure. If you set yourself really high expectations, you can be setting yourself up for failure. Really important to understand this, and really important to understand that we can't always control everything that we do. And at the moment, we cannot control what's happening outside of ourselves, what's happening out there in the world. And if you had some sort of expectation about what was going to happen between March up until probably the end of May, well, your expectation is going to fall short because of something outside yourself. So you have to always understand that you can set expectations, but if they're not realistic, or if something happens that you can't control them. So it's really important to understand that. So it can create quite unnecessary stress. So we're going to talk, towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you signs of knowing whether you do set unrealistic expectations, some tips, and then some questions that you can ask yourself when you do realize that you have set quite unattainable expectations. So one of the other problems, apart from creating stress and expectation of others, so if you expect too much of other people, it can cause a breakdown in relationships. Remember that often we set expectations for others according to our beliefs and what we think should be the way someone should behave or someone should act or the way other people should do things. And if you do that, you're going to you're setting yourself up for failure. No one will ever be able to meet your expectations ever, because nobody will ever really know exactly what it is that you need or want unless you sit there and specifically go through what you want from someone. So creating high expectations for other people is just as bad as creating high expectations for yourself. Another problem is perfectionism, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. If you set really high expectations to have to constantly be perfect, what seems to happen with perfectionism is that it's never good enough. So you're constantly chasing your tail. So perfectionism is not real. It's an unattainable belief that you have, because what is perfectionism anyway? So it's important to understand that if you set these incredible high expectations, in fact, if you set unrealistic expectations, you will always set yourself up for failure and stress. And also if you set yourself some expectations that you cannot meet, or that you feel you really need to, you have this incredible overwhelming urge that you have to meet a certain expectation, all you will do is actually give yourself stress from it. So let's have a look at some signs of how you can tell if you are creating some unrealistic expectations. Here's some of the things that you can see, okay? One of them is don't allow yourself to make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. You cannot be expected to do everything right the first time. In fact, you cannot be expected to do everything right more than the first time. In other words, have a look at a child. The best way I can explain this is the metaphor of have a look at a child that's trying to learn to walk. How many times does that child fall before it actually learns to walk? So if you think that you're going to be able to do anything in this life without making mistakes, you're just setting yourself up for a lot of stress. I mean, I've got all these notes here to present this live today, and I'm still going to mumble my words, and I'm still going to make mistakes and say the wrong thing or not think of the right word. So it's okay. That's who we are as humans. And it's important to know that that's going to happen. So if you're a person that does not allow yourself to make mistakes, you need to have a look at whether you are setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations, and to examine them with some of the questions and things I'm going to talk about in a little while, because it's really important to know that we all make mistakes, and you can too. Being overly critical of yourself, again, that could be a sign that you've got unrealistic expectations, or that and when I say that, I prefer to say unrealistic rather than high expectations, because I think you can have high expectations and you can meet them if they are realistic for you, and that's the main thing. So what is realistic for you in a high expectation is not necessarily the same as someone else. So really important that you understand that. Do you create goals according to other people? And then I suppose what I just said a minute ago goes on to this. Do you create your goals by looking at what other people are achieving? Do you create your goals according to what other people expect you to do? This again is something that you're setting yourself up for failure if you do this, and it can cause you a lot of stress. So that's another thing to have a look at. If you're sort of a person that does that all the time, are you setting unrealistic expectations? Are you a people pleaser? Do you do things that you don't want to do because you need to make sure that other people are happier than you are? Really important. A lot of people are people pleasers, and for lots of different reasons that I won't go into here today, because it's a completely different subject. And by the way, guys, anyone has any questions, please ask. Or are you setting, being able to say no to people according to what's your truth and whether you can do something or not, and being truthful about it, first to yourself and then to others, because it's not going to be good for you if you're constantly doing things to please other people rather than yourself. That's again going to cause stresses, and especially if you, and I've seen this happen a lot, when you say yes. If you're a yes person, you say yes to people to do something that you can't do. There's no way you can actually get yourself to do that. So have a look at whether you are a people pleaser. If you find you're saying yes too much, you might need to have a look at why that's happening. Are you a person that does too much? Do you over schedule things in your calendar and then stress yourself out? Again, that's creating unrealistic expectations. I have a planner that I use every day, and I plan my days out, but I always give myself break times, and I don't book things back to back, and I don't book too many things in for one day, because I know what I can do, and I'm not the sort of person that can work gun-ho. I just can't. I know there's people that can, and that's great, but that's not something that I can do. So I have to set myself the expectations of what I can do in a day according to myself. Do you constantly have a need to achieve? This is one that I sometimes still fall back into, and when I say this, guys, I say this with all love, because I used to set incredibly unrealistic expectations for myself years and years ago, and used to constantly be stressed out because I could never get everything done and couldn't achieve everything, and it was never good enough, and all those sorts of things. So are you constantly needing to achieve something? Because if you are, you need to have a look at what's going on for you. And again, guys, I'm going to give you lots of tips in a moment, and lots of questions that you can ask yourself to see whether you are setting unrealistic expectations. And the last one is, do you expect 100% all the time? Are you constantly striving to have that 100% achievement? Like I said before, perfectionism is an impossible thing to achieve. And I'm not saying you can't do things perfectly. You can do some things perfectly, absolutely. But if you're asking 100% of things of yourself all the time, it could be an unrealistic expectation for you. So here's a few other signs to let you know that you might have or are setting yourself some unrealistic expectations. And again, guys, this is no judgment. This is so that you can have a look. If you are stressed out because you are creating unrealistic expectations, or you're feeling guilty, like I've had a few people this week because they haven't done anything during the isolation time. They've been sitting at home, and some of them have been relaxing and catching up on things that they want to do, or just doing nothing. There's so many people telling you what you should do, and I guess this is why I wanted to do this today. You know what, I'm not saying sit there and veg, but really get in touch with what it is that you really need at this moment in your life. And again, of course, if you're feeling depressed or something like that, you don't want to be just sitting down and doing nothing, but you want to reach out for some help. But make sure you understand what it is that's going on for you right now, rather than saying I should be doing this, or I could have done that, or I would have done this, which is why I've called this video Woulda, Shoulda, Coulda, because there's so many people telling us what we should be doing during this isolation, but it's not right for everyone. You've got to do what's right for you. So again, a few more signs. Perfectionism is the biggest one. If you're constantly striving for perfectionism, you need to ask yourself whether you've set yourself an unrealistic expectation of what perfectionism is. Fear of failure is another sign. If you really have a massive fear of failure, that also can mean that you're setting unrealistic expectations. Low self-esteem. Why low self-esteem? Because when you have unrealistic expectations, most of the time you cannot meet them, and so it just reinforces to you that, say, I knew I couldn't do that, or say, I knew I wasn't good enough to do that. But sometimes when that happens, it's got nothing to do with you not being good enough. It could be the expectation is so high for that moment that you just can't reach it. There might be stepping stones to get to that. So these are the sort of things that you need to have a look at. And fear of change is another one too. Fear of change, fear of things being different can mean that, you know, because you've trying to control so much of what's going on, that you fear change so much, because then of course that changes the bar of your expectations. And the other one is a little bit different, similar to perfectionism, but it's about you believing that you must be perfect in everything that you do, because that is not possible, guys. We are all different, and the same way nobody can ever be perfect or do things the way you want them, you can never be perfect for someone else, because you can never understand someone 100% completely. So you cannot be perfect. You're human. You're just you. It's neither good or bad. You're just you. So there's a few other signs about perfectionism. Now here's some tips. If you feel that anything that I've already said resonates with you, here are some tips, and I'm going to give you some questions at the end that you can ask yourself to help you move through it quickly. So if you find that you're starting to or you find that you have got these unrealistic expectations that you're not meeting, that are causing you stress and all these sorts of things, and you're not understanding why you're not meeting them, the first thing is to catch yourself and to examine the actual unrealistic expectation, or the expectation that you have, with humor and curiosity, and ask yourself, is this expectation real? Is it realistic? Is it something that I can achieve? And again, I'm going to give you some really targeted questions in a moment. The next thing you can do is you could say, if you were your best friend, how would you how would you react or cope with your best friend telling you, I've got this goal or this expectation and I'm not reaching it? What advice would you give your friend? The third one is, you need to have a look at this expectation that you have and really honestly answer, does it help or does it hinder you? Is it holding you back, or is it helping you to move forward? Be compassionate to yourself and others. This is the one thing, and guys, if you want to go and have a look on my YouTube channel, I've got one of the emotional intelligence, I can't remember which pillar it is now, is about empathy. And this is about having compassion for yourself and others. Remember, we're human. Be flexible. Things change, and you cannot get caught up in the way things should have been or the way things could have been. You have to look at life for what it is in the moment. You cannot change your past. You can only be present in the very moment and change your future. So if you find yourself constantly saying coulda, woulda or shoulda, then you need to have a look at, did you set yourself some expectations that were not realistic for you? So here are some questions, guys, and you might want to write these down, because these would be really, really good for you to question yourself when you come across something, a goal that hasn't worked for you, or you're expecting something and it's stressing you out, or you're putting yourself under pressure every day. You're feeling stressed because you can't get your work finished, or you can't say no to someone, all of those sorts of things. The first question to ask yourself is this really what I want? and be really honest with yourself. So have a look at that goal, that expectation, whatever it is that's happened, or an expectation that someone else has given you, and say to yourself, is this really what I want? And of course, if it is, great, keep going with the questioning. If it's not, well, then you need to change it. You need to do something else. The next question is, how does this serve me? So if you've set yourself a goal and an expectation that it is something that you really want, ask yourself, how does it serve you? And sometimes, you know what, you might set a goal, but you might need to take little steps to get to that big goal. So is that big goal serving you, or is there other little things that you need to do? How does this hold you back? Okay? So how does this hold you back? So if the goal does not serve you, how is it holding you back? And again, you have to be very honest with yourself. And the last two questions, and these are my favorite, because this is a really great way of finding out what's really, really going on underneath having set this unrealistic expectation. And the first one is, what would I lose if I don't get that expectation? What would I lose if I don't get it? And the next one is, what would I gain if I do get it? Okay? So what would you lose if you don't? What would you lose if you do? What will you gain if you don't? And what will you gain if you do? So those questions, those two questions at the, really they're sort of four questions. If you ask yourself, what will you lose if you do and you don't have it? What would you gain if you do or you don't have it? And they might sound like they're the same questions, but they're actually not. They actually will come up, you will come up with different answers, and really have a look at whether these expectations, these goals, these things that you think you should be doing at the moment, whether they are serving you or whether they're not. And you will realize very quickly what's going on for you as to why, you know, you possibly are setting yourself these expectations, and really examine yourself, which is what is the most important thing that should be happening at the moment, not what you should or could or would do during isolation. Everyone is different, and some people respond in one way, some people respond in others. So like I said, I've had that many clients this week, you know, things like, I shouldn't be feeling like this, or I shouldn't be doing this, or I should be having this, or I should be having that. And what's happening is it's just causing them stress. So examine what your thinking is around what you think you should be doing, and make sure it is really something that you want to be doing, because if it is, it comes really, really easily to you. All right, guys, that's it for me. I've gone on for over 20 minutes. I am going to pop this in on YouTube, so if you want to watch it again and again, it'll be in there. Thank you again for watching. I do have a 3:30 live interview coming up, so please join us for that. In the meantime, have a great weekend, guys, and I hope to see you all very, very soon. Bye for now.